What's going on, everyone? My name is Don't Care. My name is, and today we're going to go over the Nun II. So this is a sequel to the 2018 film, and it's directed by Michael Chavez, who had directed The Curse of La Llorona and The Conjuring 3. Both films, as I mentioned before on this channel, were huge disappointments, and showing that the Conjuring universe may be losing a lot of steam with how bad these films have been turning out. After the disappointing first film, I had hoped that the studio would have gone the same route they took with Annabelle, where its 2014 film was a huge disappointment despite the huge build-up they were trying to go for it. But then they bounced back with the prequel, which not only actually turned out to be much better than the first film, but actually was a lot scarier than we were expecting. It's the same thing that happened with the movie Ouija, where the first film was terrible, but then the prequel came out and ended up being a huge success, and I became terrified of the actress who, played the little girl who ended up being possessed. So, yeah, I was hoping they would do the same thing with The Nun. You have a lot of the material from the first film that where we got the backstory of how Valak came to be. You could have done something with that, but instead we ended up getting a sequel, and this is what we ended up getting. So, how did it turn out? Well, the plot for the film takes place after the events of the first film, where Frenchie, played by the returning Jonas Blockhead, has been possessed by the demon Valak and is causing trouble at this boarding school where the demon's terrorizing these poor girls who live there. So, Sister Irene, played once again by Tessa Farmiga, hopefully I said it right, is sent to investigate the terrifying supernatural events with Sister Deborah, played by Storm Reed. So the two must work together in order to stop Valak and this time send the demon back to hell and never return again. But of course, since we've seen The Conjuring 2, we know that's not going to happen. So, the first half of this film is super boring. I mean, my God, it was filled with so much predictable jump scares, nothing new being added to what feels like the same entire plot we've seen in these movies, and no investment in what's going on with our characters, which, is a same thing because you do have some decent actors here, but there's nothing really going on in the first half of the story to make me give a damn. The only saving grace for the story is that we have Tessa, who gives it her all as Sister Irene. I loved her performance here. She is the heart and soul of this movie, and I felt it was the only one we really care about what's going on. We had Jonas as Frenchie, who is good, but a shame we didn't get to see him doing much in the movie with Sister Irene, because, they did have some decent chemistry in the last film. So I thought we would, flesh that out a little bit more, but unfortunately we didn't. Storm Reed as Sister Deborah, she was fine, as were the other kids in this movie, which is good because I was worried that we were going to have some kid actors who were not going to be that good, but thankfully they've been finding some very good kid actors to, you know, be terrified and actually be good in these movies. But again, you're not invested in their characters because they aren't as fleshed out as Frenchie and Sister Irene. You don't really care what's going to happen to them because you already know how it's all going to turn out. Again, The Conjuring 2, we already know how it's all going to turn out then for this movie. Thankfully, the second half of the story does help save the rest of the film, and this is where the pacing does pick up. I do like how the rest of the film, rest of the second half, actually does a good job with this movie. Yes, there are still jump scares and they are predictable, but I still found myself enjoying the second half better than the first half. It's a shame that the first half was so bad and boring that you're likely not going to, care what happened or even remember what happened before we got to the second half of this film. As I said before, the jump scares are all over the place and predictable. I did like a few of them, like the magazine stand one, which I thought was the best part of the movie, but unfortunately the trailer did ruin it, so I felt you shouldn't have done that. The special effects were meh, the music was meh too. Nothing new was added to this film, and it feels like they just copied what happened in the first film and just repeated it for this one. So, The Nun 2, I will say it's a little better than the first movie, but it's still not a good horror film. It's still a disappointment because instead of doing a sequel, you could have done a prequel. You had the material needed for that. Look what happened with Annabelle with its prequel. They did a great job with that. You could have done the same thing for this one, but instead, you went with a sequel. It felt pretty lazy with the first half. The second half was actually better, but it still wasn't a good horror film. It's one that you're likely not going to remember in a couple of hours or even a day. So, yeah, it was very disappointing. If you have a different opinion about this movie or what you think of the other Conjuring films, leave some comments below. Let me know what you think. hit my subscribe button, check my Facebook page, check my Twitter page, check out T3 Media's channel, subscribe to their channel, keep updated with their videos, and I'll see you next time, give you more love and entertainment. Until then, take care, be safe, love you all, goodbye, and have a good weekend.